My name is Leo Vance, and this is not a story about revenge. It's a quiet story, one that unfolded not with shouts and bangs, but with the steady, persistent rhythm of rain against a windowpane. It's about the years I spent learning the difference between a house and a home, between the family you are born into and the family you build. If you have ever felt like a ghost in your own life, a silent observer of a world you were meant to be a part of, then you will understand. This is a story about untangling the roots of neglect and learning, finally, how to plant a garden of my own. It begins in Salem, Oregon, a city that always felt to me like it was holding its breath, perpetually damp and draped in a soft, gray light. Our house was a modest single-story home on a street lined with aging cherry trees that exploded in a riot of pink every spring, a beauty that never seemed to penetrate the walls of our home. My mother, Eleanor, passed away when I was just a toddler, a complication from pneumonia that my father rarely spoke of. She existed for me only in a handful of faded photographs, a woman with kind eyes and a smile that seemed to hold all the warmth that was missing from my life. Her absence was a hollow space in our home, a silence that my father, Robert, filled with his own quiet, impenetrable grief. He was a man who moved through the world as if carrying a great weight, and my presence seemed only to add to the burden, a living reminder of the woman he had lost. When I was 4, Robert remarried. Clara came into our lives with a bright, brittle smile and a gaze that assessed everything and everyone for their utility. A year later, my half-brother, Ethan, was born, and the final piece of their perfect picture clicked into place. Ethan was the sun around which their world revolved. For Robert, he was a second chance at fatherhood, untainted by loss. For Clara, he was a reflection of herself, the future she would meticulously shape and polish. And I became a shadow. It wasn't a cruel, overt kind of exclusion. It was a slow, steady erosion of my place in the family, 1,000 tiny cuts. When Ethan was given a brand new leather baseball glove for his birthday, smelling of polish and promise, I was given his old, scuffed one with the quiet instruction, "It's still perfectly good." When he brought home a report card with B's and C's, he was praised for his effort, his struggles framed as the charming quirks of a blossoming mind. When I brought home straight A's, my father would offer a distracted nod. "Good work, Leo. Don't get complacent." Clara's words were the most insidious, delivered with a gentle, concerned tone. "Leo, dear, why can't you be more outgoing like Ethan? Or you should be so grateful for everything Robert and I provide for you." Gratitude became a currency I was expected to pay for the simple act of existing in their house. My bedroom was a small, converted storage space in the back of the house, with a window that looked out onto the damp, mossy fence of our neighbor's yard. Ethan's room was large and bright, filled with posters, sports equipment, and the latest video game consoles. Once, I asked my father if I could move into the empty guest room upstairs. He sighed, a sound of profound weariness. "Don't ask for so much, Leo. Just be content with what you have." I learned to be content. Or rather, I learned to be quiet. I retreated into books, into the silent world of the local library, where no one expected anything from me. I learned to build a fortress within myself, a place where their indifference couldn't reach me. I wasn't a jealous child. I was a lonely one. All I craved was a single, unambiguous sign that I mattered. A hand on my shoulder that wasn't meant to move me out of the way. A look that wasn't clouded with disappointment or duty. The years passed in this quiet rhythm of exclusion. When I turned 18 and graduated from high school with honors, no one from my family attended the ceremony. That evening, I gathered my courage and approached my father about college. I had dreams of studying architecture, of designing spaces that felt open and welcoming, everything our house was not. He was sitting in his armchair, reading the paper. He didn't look up when I spoke. "College is expensive, Leo," he said, his voice flat. "We have to be realistic. All our savings are for Ethan's future. He has so much potential, we have to invest in him properly." The finality in his tone was absolute. There was no room for argument. Ethan, who spent his afternoons playing video games and his evenings with friends, was the investment. I was the liability to be managed. That night, I didn't cry. I lay in my small bed, tracing the water stains on the ceiling, and made a silent promise to myself. If they wouldn't build a future for me, I would build one for myself. I moved out a month later into a tiny rundown apartment on the other side of town. The rent was cheap, the faucet in the kitchen sink dripped with a maddening persistence, and the walls were the color of old mustard. But it was mine. I got a job at Evergreen Market, a local grocery store, stocking shelves on the night shift. The work was grueling, the hours lonely, but every paycheck was a brick in the foundation of my independence. I was free from Clara's subtle barbs, from my father's heavy silence, from the constant, unspoken message that I was not enough. My only connection to the idea of family came in the form of my grandfather, Arthur Vance. He lived in Seattle, where he ran a successful real estate development firm, Vance Sterling Properties. He was a man carved from a different, stronger wood than my father. His calls were infrequent, his schedule packed with projects and meetings, but when he did call, his voice was a lifeline. He'd ask about my life, listen with genuine interest, and always end the call with the same words: "You have your mother's heart, Leo. Don't ever let anyone tell you it's not strong enough." I never told him the full truth of my life with Robert and Clara. I didn't want to burden him, and a part of me was ashamed, as if their neglect was a reflection of my own unworthiness. He was the one who told me about my mother, Eleanor, about her love for poetry, her fierce belief in fairness, and her dream of traveling the world. "I should have been there more," he'd say, his voice thick with a guilt that spanned decades. Work always pulled me away. I lived like that for 3 years, in a state of quiet survival. I was building a life, albeit a small and threadbare one. I didn't know that my father and Clara were also building something, a life founded on a secret so profound it would eventually shatter the fragile peace I had fought so hard to create. The first crack in the facade appeared on a damp afternoon in early autumn. I was 21, still working nights at Evergreen Market, still living in the same apartment with the dripping faucet. My phone buzzed with a text from Clara. "We've moved. Come for a small get-together tonight. 217 Aspen Lane, Cedar Ridge Estates." I stared at the message, a knot forming in my stomach. A new house. Cedar Ridge Estates was a new, upscale development on the west side of Salem, a world away from our old neighborhood. There had been no mention of moving, no discussions, no invitations to house hunt. Just a sudden, accomplished fact. My first instinct was to ignore it. But a stubborn, hopeful part of me wondered if this was an olive branch. Maybe, in this new house, there would be a new beginning. I bought a bottle of decent Pinot Noir and a small, beautifully bound journal as a housewarming gift. As I drove into Cedar Ridge, I felt like an interloper. The streets were wide and clean, lined with perfectly symmetrical young trees. The houses were large and modern, with manicured lawns and welcoming front porches. I found 217 Aspen Lane, a handsome 2-story home with slate gray siding and a cheerful red door. For a moment, standing on the stone walkway, a strange sense of déjà vu washed over me, a feeling of familiarity I couldn't place. Clara opened the door, her smile stretched thin over her perfectly made-up face. "Leo, you made it. Come in." The house was immaculate. Polished hardwood floors, a cavernous living room with a stone fireplace, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Family photos were already on the mantelpiece. Robert and Clara on a cruise, Ethan at his high school graduation. None of me. I wasn't surprised. My father was in the kitchen, uncorking a bottle of expensive-looking champagne. He gave me a curt nod. "You're here." I handed him the gifts. "Congratulations on the new place, Dad." He took them and set them on the counter without a second glance, then turned back to his task. The party was a small gathering of their new neighbors and a few of my father's colleagues from the bank. They talked about property values, landscaping, and the local golf club. I sat in a corner, nursing a glass of water, a silent spectator. "We were so lucky to get this place," Clara announced to the room, her voice shimmering with pride. "Robert has such a wonderful eye for real estate. He knew this area was about to take off." My father smiled modestly, accepting the praise. I tried to smile with them, to feel happy for their good fortune. I didn't know I was congratulating them on stealing mine. After that night, a strange new pattern began. I was invited to every family occasion: Thanksgiving, Christmas, Ethan's birthday. The invitations were always terse texts from Clara. Dinner at 6. We have guests. Please be on time. I went, driven by a lingering sense of duty. And at every gathering, they insisted on taking family photos. Leo, come stand next to your father, Clara would say, arranging us like props. Let's get a nice one for the album. I would stand at the edge of the frame, my smile feeling as stiff and unnatural as my posture. My father would place a casual arm around Ethan's shoulders while I stood apart, connected only by the camera's lens. Once, Clara even put her hand on my shoulder, her touch light and possessive, her smile aimed at an invisible audience. It was baffling. For years, I had been systematically erased from the family narrative. Now, suddenly, I was being meticulously documented as a part of it. When I asked Clara about it once, she waved a dismissive hand. Oh, we just want to have some nice memories to look back on. Your family too, you know. Her words felt hollow, rehearsed. I knew I was being used for something, but I couldn't understand what. I was an actor in a play I hadn't auditioned for, playing the part of the beloved older son for an audience I couldn't see. The curtain finally rose on this elaborate stage 2 years later, on a bitterly cold Christmas Eve. That Christmas Eve, the biting Oregon cold seemed to seep right through the thin fabric of my jacket as I stood before the glossy red door of 217 Aspen Lane. The phone in my hand was still warm from my grandfather's call a few minutes earlier. Leo, come over right now. I'm at your parents' new house, he'd said, his voice bright with an excitement that made my stomach clench with a nameless dread. I wanted to surprise you. Grandfather Arthur, a man whose life was a whirlwind of blueprints and business deals in Seattle, rarely came to Salem. The thought of seeing him should have filled me with joy, but his presence in that house felt wrong, like two storylines colliding unexpectedly. I pushed the door open. The warmth from the fireplace and the rich aroma of roasting turkey washed over me. Grandfather stood at the head of the long dining table, his silver hair gleaming. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, lit up when he saw me. He strode over and pulled me into a hug, his familiar cologne a scent of stability in a world that was about to tilt on its axis. Leo, my boy, he said, holding me at arm's length and beaming. What do you think? Do you like this house? His voice was brimming with a deep, personal pride, as if he were presenting me with a masterpiece he had commissioned himself. Yes, it's a beautiful house, Grandpa, I managed, my voice tight. A beat of silence. But it's my parents' house. The festive atmosphere in the room evaporated. Grandfather's smile froze, then crumbled. His eyes widened as they darted from my face to my father, who had gone deathly pale by the fireplace, his hand trembling around a glass of whiskey. Clara, seated at the table, gave a small, nervous cough, forcing a smile that didn't reach her panicked eyes. Your parents' house? Grandfather repeated, his voice dropping, suddenly as cold and sharp as the winter wind outside. Leo, explain what you mean. I didn't understand what was happening, but a terrible premonition bloomed in my chest. I looked to my father for an explanation, but he just stared into his glass, refusing to meet my gaze. Clara jumped in, her voice high and strained. Arthur, there must be a misunderstanding. This is the family house. Leo just. I'm not talking to you, Clara, Grandfather said, his gaze fixed on me. And in that moment, I knew a devastating secret was about to be unearthed. Leo. The truth. I took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of their collective deception pressing down on me. I don't live here, Grandpa. I live in a small apartment across town. I pay my own rent, with the money I make working at the grocery store. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence that seemed to suck all the air from the room. Enough, Grandfather's voice boomed, cutting through the tension like a thunderclap. He turned to my father. Robert, explain yourself. 3 years ago, I transferred $550,000 to your account. It was for a house. A gift for Leo, to give him a proper start in life. I was very clear. The house was to be in his name. So you will tell me right now, Why my grandson is living in a rundown apartment while you and your family are living in the house I bought for him. The blood drained from my father's face. Clara opened her mouth, but no words came out. I stood frozen, the numbers echoing in my head. $550,000. A gift for me? I looked from my grandfather's furious face to my father's crumbling composure, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with sickening clarity. The new house. The sudden invitations. The staged family photos. I thought it would be better for the whole family, my father stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Ethan is young. He needs a stable environment. Leo, he's always been so independent. Independent? Grandfather roared, taking a step toward him. You call working night shifts to afford a miserable apartment independent? He was forced into it because you stole from him. You took the money I sent, put this house in your own name, and lied to me for years. He gestured wildly at the mantelpiece. Those photos. You sent me photos to make me believe he was living here, happy, a part of your family. It was all a charade to cover your greed. My throat was tight, my chest aching. The photos. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed illusion to keep my grandfather's money flowing. Clara, finding her voice, tried a different tactic. Arthur, you don't understand. Ethan is my son. He's the future of this family. Leo, he's not the same. He doesn't deserve a house like this. Shut your mouth, grandfather snarled, his voice shaking with rage. Doesn't deserve it? He is Eleanor's son. My daughter's flesh and blood. I entrusted him to you, Robert, and you have not only failed him, you have robbed him. He turned to me, his expression softening, his eyes filled with a fierce, protective love. Leo, go pack a bag. You're coming to Seattle with me tonight. And this house, he glared at my father, I will see to it that it becomes yours, as it was always intended. Robert, you can expect to hear from my lawyers. My father finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. Leo, I just wanted what was best for the family. Best for the family? The words came out of me, calm and cold. You never considered me part of this family. I spent my entire life trying to earn a single scrap of your approval, and you stole my future from under my nose without a second thought. I turned away from him, unable to bear the sight of his weakness. Grandfather put a steadying hand on my shoulder. Let's go, Leo. Your life here is over. As we walked out into the cold Christmas night, leaving the shattered illusion of a happy family behind us, I felt not triumph, but a profound, aching emptiness. The house that was supposed to be my foundation had been my prison, and I was finally, terribly, free. The drive to Seattle was a blur of rain-streaked highways and the quiet hum of the SUV's engine. I sat beside my grandfather, wrapped in a blanket he'd produced from the back seat, feeling as if I were in a dream. The world I had known, the small apartment, the late-night shifts, the quiet loneliness, had been irrevocably dismantled in a single evening. We arrived at my grandfather's home in the Queen and neighborhood as the first hints of dawn were coloring the sky. It wasn't a house, it was a sanctuary. A century-old craftsman, beautifully restored, with dark wood, stained glass, and windows that looked out over the glittering expanse of Puget Sound. A fire was already crackling in the hearth, and a woman with a kind face, his housekeeper Mrs. Gable, greeted us with warm mugs of tea. Your room is ready, Leo, grandfather said, leading me up a wide, creaking staircase. He opened a door to a room that was larger than my entire apartment. It had a comfortable-looking bed, a large oak desk by a window with a stunning view, and shelves already lined with books on architecture and design. A fresh start, he said softly. Over the next few days, the full scope of my father's betrayal came to light. It wasn't just the house. For years, Grandfather had been sending Robert a substantial monthly allowance meant for my care, for clothes, school supplies, hobbies, and a college fund. Money I had never seen. My life of scarcity, of hand-me-downs and skipped meals, had been a choice my father made. He had siphoned off my inheritance to fund a comfortable life for his new family, while I worked myself to exhaustion just to stay afloat. The anger I felt was a cold, hard stone in my chest. Grandfather was livid. He wanted to sue, to take Robert and Clara for every penny. They need to face the consequences, Leo, he insisted. We were sitting in his library, surrounded by the scent of old paper and leather. I looked out at the water, at the ferries gliding silently across the Sound. "No, Grandpa," I said, the words surprising even myself. "Don't sue him. I don't want to spend the next few years of my life tangled up in their mess. I don't want my future to be about fixing the past." "What about the house?" he asked. "Sell it," I said, a sense of clarity washing over me. "I don't want it. It's tainted. Sell it, and let me use the money to go to college. Let me build my own future on my own terms." My grandfather looked at me, a long, searching look. A slow, proud smile spread across his face. "That's my grandson," he said. "Your mother would be so proud." And so began my new life. The house in Salem was sold, and the money, a significant sum, was placed in a trust for my education. I enrolled at the University of Washington in their highly regarded architecture program. I was older than most of my classmates, but I was hungrier. Every lecture, every project, was a gift I refused to take for granted. I also started working part-time at Vance Sterling Properties. I wasn't given a fancy title. I started in the mailroom, then moved to assisting one of the project managers. I learned the business from the ground up, earning the respect of my colleagues not as the boss's grandson, but as Leo, the guy who was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. In Chicago, I found a community. I found friends in my program who shared my passion. I met a girl named Maya, a brilliant landscape architecture student with a quick laugh and eyes that saw the world in shapes and colors I was just beginning to understand. For the first time, I felt I belonged. I didn't hear from my family in Oregon. A clean break. I sent my father a single letter informing him of the sale of the house and my decision not to press charges. I told him I needed space and time to heal. I never received a reply. 2 years passed. Seattle was home. My life was full with studies, work, and the easy companionship of Maya and my grandfather. The scars of my past were still there, but they no longer ached. They were simply a part of my story, a reminder of the strength I hadn't known I possessed. Then, one afternoon, the past called. It was a number from Oregon I didn't recognize. I answered, and Clara's voice, thin and stripped of all its former arrogance, came through the line. "Leo? It's Clara. We're in trouble." She told me a story of collapse. Without my grandfather's money, their lifestyle had been unsustainable. Robert had lost his job at the bank. They had lost the fancy apartment they'd rented after selling the house. Ethan had dropped out of college, unable to cope without the cushion of unearned privilege. He was, she said, working at a fast food restaurant and hated it. "He's your brother, Leo," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "We're family. Can you help us? Just a little something to get back on our feet." Family. The word hung in the air between us. I thought of the boy who got everything while I got nothing. I thought of the years of quiet neglect. I thought of the house built on a lie. "No, Clara," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I can't. But I learned how to stand on my own when I had no one," I said, the words coming from a place of deep, hard-won conviction. "It's time Ethan learned, too. I don't owe you anything." I hung up the phone, my heart steady. It wasn't an act of cruelty, but an act of self-preservation. It was the final brick in the wall of healthy boundaries I had been building for 2 years. A few weeks later, on a trip to Portland for a site visit with my grandfather, I saw him. Ethan. He was standing on a street corner, looking thin and lost, a world away from the golden boy I remembered. He saw me, and a flicker of something, shame, hope, crossed his face. He approached me, his hands shoved in the pockets of a worn jacket. "Leo. Man. I heard you're doing well." "I am," I said simply. "Listen," he started, his eyes darting around nervously. "Dad and Mom, things are really bad. I was wondering if maybe you could, loan me some cash." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and I felt not anger, but a profound sadness. He was the product of a love that had been a poison, a love that had coddled him into helplessness. "I can't give you money, Ethan," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "But I can give you some advice. The world doesn't owe you anything. The sooner you learn that, the sooner you can start building a life you can be proud of." I did it. So can you. I turned and walked away, leaving him on that street corner. I didn't look back. Not out of malice, but because my path was forward. My future was in Seattle, in the buildings I hoped to design, in the warmth of my grandfather's home, in the shared dreams I was building with Maya. My past was a house in Oregon, a house I had finally, truly, left behind. My story was no longer about the love I was denied, but about the love I was learning to create for myself, a structure built on a foundation of self-respect, strong enough to withstand any storm.